So for my policy advocacy speech, I'm going to be doing something very similar to what I did in my personal advocacy speech. Um, but in this speech, it's going to be more of a persuasive kind of thing where I'm going to try to persuade MLB higher ups to create a new rule in which there will be consequences for teams that are caught cheating with technology in baseball, and also another rule where there needs to be dugout checks before and during games to make sure that there's none of this cheating going on. I think that doing these things will clean up cheating pretty quickly. I think that in the next year, if they implement these practices, I think that cheating could be gone altogether. So first off, I'm going to start off with how right now there's no written rule for cheating with technology or the consequences that would come with it if you were caught doing it. Rob Manfred a few years ago came out and said that if you were caught cheating, there would be consequences, but he didn't give exact specifics on that or what would happen. And I think that kind of enabled teams like the Red Sox and Astros, which I talked about in my personal advocacy speech. I think it kind of enabled them to do what they did. And what they did was they used the TVs and the Apple Watches to relay signs to the hitters. And I think that not having the written rule kind of just let these teams do that and didn't really give them a reason not to carry out with it. And I think with this new written rule, there needs to be specific consequences like I think if they're caught, there needs to be fines against players and coaches. I mean, these guys make a lot of money, but with what they're doing and the cheating, it's putting other players on different teams. It's putting their careers at risk. For example, there was a pitcher who was pitching against the Astros, and there was a total of like 32 trash can bangs during the game, which is how they relayed the signs. The Astros guys relayed it to their hitters like that. So that means they were cheating the entire game this guy pitched, and they ended up hitting really well off him. And he got taken out after 2 innings. And after that, he got sent down from the MLB team, and he never came back up. So his career was over because of this cheating that they did. And there's been plenty of instances where that's happened because of this cheating. So I definitely think, like I said, these guys make a lot of money, but there needs to be a harsh fine if they're caught, because just putting other people's careers at risk is way too detrimental to the league. So I think that those fines and the coaches need to be fined too, because the Astros and the Red Sox coaches, they were suspended for a year because of how they got caught. But there needs to be an extended period where they get suspended so that they're given a reason to not do it again. Because even with the consequence they gave out with the year suspension, I mean, they could come back and do it again, and there's just no real reason for them not to keep doing it. And I think if these teams get caught for a second time, the suspensions need to be even worse. I think if they get caught for a second time, there needs to be suspensions from 5 to 7 years, because that would really give these players a reason to not keep doing it. Because it's been happening for so long now, they're just used to it. There just needs to really be a reason. And then another thing I think the MLB could do to make sure that the cheating doesn't keep going on is dugout checks. I think that dugout checks before the games to make sure there's no equipment like technology in the dugouts to cheat. I think that they need to check that before the game. And then also I think these MLB personnel that would do those checks need to stay in the dugout throughout the game to make sure that they don't bring out anything else in. Because if they just check before, then they could bring something in during the game and then use it then. So there would be no real reason for just the before check. And I mean, overall, I think if the MLB does these two things, it could clean up the cheating pretty quickly. I think that until this point, there hasn't really been a need to make these rules because no one had gotten caught. But ever since these two teams have gotten caught, I think everyone around the league has really taken notice of what's been going on and is realizing that there's probably other teams doing it too. and which is another reason why those dugout checks would be so helpful, because I mean, any team that would be cheating would get caught and they could clean it up. And there's just no place for that in baseball. And that's what I talked about in my personal advocacy speech, was how this stuff going on, it was never meant to be in baseball, and really technology of any kind shouldn't be used during a baseball game. It's great and stuff to kind of advance the game of baseball outside of the games, but once the games start, it needs to just go to the game that everyone loves, which is just straight baseball with no technology and no cheating, and that would give everyone an even playing field, and then the fans would have a lot better time watching these games, knowing that everything is fair, and the players would probably be a lot better off playing at an even playing field than the way it was the last 2 years, where two teams had a big advantage over the other teams. But overall, I think that if they do these two things, it could clean it up pretty quickly. And the MLB higher up should definitely think about doing this.